Are you looking to create a background, a backdrop, or a studio for your podcast, your home office, or your YouTube videos? Let me show you how to simply using some common tools and supplies from your local hardware store. Let's cover what you need material-wise for this project. So I have some cardboard because I'm going to be doing some work on the hardwood and I don't want to scratch it up. The very first thing we're going to do is build the frame. So for that, you need your wood and your drywall, which I will share what I bought in Home Depot here shortly. Here are wood and drywall screws. Along with that, of course, you need your drill and anything else like hammers, glue, things of that nature that you're going to need to make that frame. Once we actually create the frame, put the drywall on, now we have to beautify it. And so with that, we need to, well, before the paint even, I have joint compound because you want to make your wall nice and flat. So you're going to need sandpaper, joint compound, all of that stuff. Then you're going to layer it with some paint. And with that, you need rollers, brushes, all of that good stuff. Note that I have Green Acres from Behr. So this is going to be one side. And that's because Green Acres is this really nice green that shows up really well in chroma key and is just a great green screen effect behind you. And then on the other side, I'm just going to choose another color that looks a little nicer that isn't green. So now let's start working on the frame after I show you what I bought wood and drywall wise. So here are the 2x4s that I bought at Home Depot. I'm having these and the drywall delivered to my house because the drywall would not fit in my SUV. So that adds $80 to the overall cost, which is a killer. But ultimately, this is actually a pretty sustainable and affordable project. Each 2x4 here is less than $4. You could probably get one a little cheaper that maybe isn't quite a 2x4, but this is cheap enough. I didn't really care. I think this isn't the highest quality of wood, but I think it's certainly going to do the job. And then here is the drywall that I purchased. It's a 1/2 inch thick, so I think it's going to be good enough to, hey, maybe put a shelf on or at least have some durability to it as well. It's only $13 a sheet. So again, I'll go over all of the costs at the end of the project, but overall pretty affordable. Those are the two things I got. So now let's get to actually building the frame. Okay, so our frame is now finished. It's very simple. So we just have a base. Altogether, the length is 8 feet, I believe, because that's the size of our drywall, trying to make it easy for myself so I don't need to cut. So I do have 2 supports. I have one beam here and another beam here. That's so I can have 2 sides. So one side can be the green screen, the other side could be, I don't know, whatever layout that I want. Now, if you only want a single side, then you only really need this single piece here. That will reduce costs and work for you. Also note that I have added 3 screws there on the bottom just to give it a little more support because the drywall will be fairly heavy. Now, one thing I did that may not work, I did not add a top support going across. I may end up having to do that, but just because of the amount of work, I'm going to try to not do that, see if it flies. So now that we have our support finished, now we just add the drywall and then we can start actually creating the backdrop in the studio that you want to create. So we have our first piece of drywall on the frame. It looks fantastic. Now, because of my awkward shaped room, the second piece of drywall is too big. It won't fit because the roof is too low. So now we need to cut this piece of drywall to the appropriate length to put it on top. How you do that is just use a box cutter and you're gonna score the drywall where you want it. And then if you have 2 people, especially with a piece this big, you can kind of snap your wrist and snap it a little bit. It's gonna just break across that crease. It will look fantastic. Because I'm by myself today, I'm going to try to do it in pieces. The effect will be the same. Just be sure, number one, you have cardboard on your floor. That's the whole reason I have the cardboard, because I don't want to be cutting into my wood. And then also just be sure that it's as straight as possible, because once you score it and you break it, it is what it is, right? So let's get doing that right now. Add the second piece on top, and then we've got our first backdrop ready to go. Well, would you look at that? Woo! That right there is a wall, baby. So we now have our finished wall, our background. So now we need to start beautifying it. And depending on who you are, this is either the fun part or the worst part of all. So first thing, we need to take care of this line that is between the two pieces of drywall. What we're gonna do is add some drywall tape over this. So that kind of masks that line, and then we're gonna put some, they call it mud or joint compound. We're gonna put that over that tape, let it dry, sand it down, and then we're able to paint the entire thing. Also note, not sure if you can see, I think it's hidden over here, but for each of those nails or screws that I screwed in, obviously you can see those. So be sure that those are screwed in enough that they're kind of sunken into the drywall a little bit. And then we're gonna put some joint compound over that and sand it, color it as well. So that's what we're gonna do right now. Think about what color you wanna turn your background. Do you wanna make a green screen? Do you wanna make a nice burgundy, sage, pretty office color? Whatever you want, think about that. Let's get to work. Okay, so our backdrop is now finished and it looks exactly how I envisioned it. I didn't want to have the whole thing to be the green screen, so I did this dual color type thing. The reason I love this project, twofold. Number one, this isn't permanent. This isn't in your house. I can go back and I can paint that white portion. I can paint the whole thing. I can personalize this however I want. Two, this obviously, from sure what you've seen, I am not Bob Vila, all right? I am not perfect. And so right here, it looks fine. And this is where the majority, I mean, probably a little closer, about right here, that's where the majority of my videos are gonna be taken. And this is not a perfect project. When we start moving in a little closer here, you see my drywall work is pretty crap, to be honest. It's much harder than I thought it would be. And so I didn't do this perfectly, and no one's ever gonna know. If you're not handy, if you haven't done this type of work before, perfectly fine. You just can't be absolutely horrible, but I think if I can do it, trust me, you can do it. So there we go. If you're mainly interested in how do you make a backdrop in a little studio, now obviously here I don't have sides. I'm gonna see what it looks like without sides, but that is, you do the same thing, but you just make a smaller version of it. Super easy to do. So follow the same exact steps. Then you can really make almost like its own little room if you really wanted to. But that is how you make that wall and a little studio for yourself. What I'm gonna do with the remaining time is personalize this a little bit, try to figure out how to dampen the echo of this room, and then we'll talk about what's the overall cost and time required to do something like this now that I've done it completely and can give you accurate measurements as of 2024. All right, so now let's look at our cost for this project. Note that this is for a simple one background behind you, two drywall panels, just like what we created here in this video. So the 2x4s are about $20. The drywall panels are $25. The paint, I use two different types of paints, half a gallon each, that's $30. Then you have all the drywall tape, the screws, joint compound, things of that nature. Now what really killed me was the delivery fee. That was $80. If you really look at it, it was over a third of the overall cost for my project. If you don't need that, you can get this background for about $110, which if you're really big into podcasting or making YouTube videos, or if you just want a nice office background that's fully customizable, I would highly recommend this, and I do think it's pretty cost effective. And now there we go. We now have our fully customizable and personalized background that, in my opinion, looks a lot more professional for your podcast, YouTube channel, or even your office. That is a freestanding structure, so it's independent of your actual house. And you can always go back and change it. You can add more shelves, change the paint. It's a lot easier to manage than an entire room. So thank you for watching. Hope this has helped. If you have any questions, comment below. Happy building, folks.